There you go. So if you plan to attend and want to be seen, let's keep going. We want to welcome you. This is Racism Discussion Series number 10. It's going to be an open forum where we're going to be discussing and reviewing the past 9 months. So again, welcome to our series, our discussion series on race, which is being brought to you by the Diversity Committee of the Lake Sumter branch of the American Association of University Women. This is the 10th in our series, and the anniversary plus 1 day of the murder of George Floyd, is a particularly poignant time, since that event is really what prompted the Diversity Committee to start this program. So let's take a look at what we're going to do today. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the topics which we've discussed for the past 9 months. Then we're going to share reflections, insights, ask questions, identify what still needs to be addressed. We will assess where you've been, what you've learned, and where you want to go. And we're going to be asking you for recommendations for the upcoming sessions. Now, since last July, which is when we started this, we covered a wide array of topics. These included Racism 101, Understanding Race and Racism, White Privilege, Anti-Racism, Implicit Bias, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Microaggressions, Implications and Impact of Confederate Monuments, Systemic Racism in Housing, as well as in voting rights. So what we'd like to do to help keep us focused is reflect on one topic at a time. And to help with the process, we're going to offer the following questions as a guide. What did you get out of each topic? Let me stop for a second. You may have noticed, which we suggested in our invitation, the format is a little different. Where we used to, in the past, we would send out preparatory material. This time, it's kind of a review. We've sent out the previous materials and really want to hear from you. Again, your experiences since you started this journey. And so again, to kind of help us focus or get things rolling, we want to know what did you get out of each topic? What's still troublesome for you about each topic? And how have you made sense of the information? So again, to kind of keep us a little bit on the focus side, we're going to see if we can't take this topic by topic. Of course, any questions or comments you have, we're not tied to these questions, but whatever you bring with you is what we want to hear. These are just to kind of have gotten the juices flowing. So why don't we start with understanding racism when we did Racism 101. So we'd like to hear from any of you, if you would, share your comments, your reflections, your insights. Now, since this is okay, Charlene says it's for her dividing it all into what she's learned into topics maybe isn't the best way for her, and maybe she's not the only one. In which case, that's fine. And maybe if we hear from the rest of you, if that's
Becky, I'm seeing some heads nodding in agreement.
okay.
How flexible do you care to be? My sense is our plan was only a rough guideline anyway. Let it rip.
Let's be flexible. This session is for and about y'all, so please.
Ginny Rivera has her hand up.
Okay.
Okay. I've found these discussions to be enormously helpful in understanding the nature of systemic racism, that by law and practice, systemic racism is part of American society. I don't know what to do about it. I feel I understand racism, particularly the idea of white privilege. I've always thought I stood on my own 2 feet, but no, I did not. I had a big boost because I was born to my parents. But I'm interested in what can we do as 80-odd-year-old people in the villages, Florida, to make anything better. We live in a white solo. We live in a highly conservative neighborhood. We can vote, but we'll never win anything. And I just am floored by thinking about what can I do.
Thank you, Ginny. So does someone have, let's see, how can we respond? If some folks have a response to Ginny's question. I see Linda had her hand up.
For me, Ginny, that is the central concern from the Racism 101 topic, and it carries me forward. I have educated myself. I'm continuing to educate myself. I see things happening very differently than I saw things happening before. And I get that the laws are written by people who have individual beliefs, and they are carried out by people who have other individual beliefs. But I don't see the connection between individual anti-racism and systemic anti-racism, how I as an individual can have an impact on that systemic level. So I'm absolutely with you. I have to keep coming back to saying, educate myself, educate other people, talk about it, keep it alive, and that ultimately has an impact. But I will confess to you that I am in despair when I see the laws passed in Texas, the laws that are being passed in this state, voter suppression, education suppression, healthcare. I see that systemic racism everywhere, and I don't know what to do to stop it.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Do we have some other I saw some, Charlene, I think, Char. Why don't you share, if you would, what you put in the chat?
Well, I can, or people could just read the chat. I would like to answer Linda, and I understand despair, but that's the last thing we can let ourselves do. We might not be able to do everything, but we need to do what we can. We can't all be in my old brain, the newspaper publisher that in Groveland stood up to the powers that be by, publishing articles. But we can support the people that do that. We can write to our congressmen. We can address the people who are friends of ours that unwittingly are saying things that reflect racism. And that's why I'm trying to find comments. The one I really loved was, I understand your life. What's white privilege? And I say, I understand your life was hard. I'm not saying it wasn't, but white privilege means that it wasn't made harder because of the color of your skin. So I've used that on a couple of my friends I've worked it in. I try to say things that make them think as opposed to label them. But I think the biggest thing we can do is not despair and to keep working. One of my favorite stories is a little girl that is on the seashore, and all these starfish have washed up, and she's picking them up and she's throwing them back into the ocean. And this grumpy old man comes by and he says, "What do you think you're doing? You can't save all those starfish." And she took the one she was holding, tossed it in the ocean, said, "Maybe not, but I just saved that one." So that's my advice. Don't despair. Do what we can do.
Thank you, Shar.
Thanks, Shar.
Jeannie, were you wanting to respond to that, or we've got Peg's hand up, Judy's hand up.
Jill.
I don't know how to.
Okay, let me just 1 second. If you probably read it, but again, I want to reiterate in response to the question, Ginny's question. We can join NAACP. They have the Defense League you can donate to. These are things we can do. And Shar mentioned a Changing Hearts discussion group. So we can look for groups that might be integrated and have some similar interests in terms of addressing this. So please, I just want to, so just to respond to Ginny now. So let's see if we're responding to either Ginny or Linda's comment or Shar's. Can we do that? We're going to be very
Jill would like to speak, responding to Shar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to, Shar, I think the person you were talking about was Mabel Norris Reese. And what I wanted to share with everybody is one of the things we can do is help highlight and raise to consciousness the people who have fought against racism, who have worked for justice. And Mabel is one of those people. We are in the process right now of renominating her for the Florida Women's Hall of Fame. And I hope everyone in AAUW in this group will want to help support that nomination. But I'm writing the text. That's what I'm going to be finishing this afternoon. I just wanted to read this one short part because it's related to what Char was talking about and we're talking about. Mabel Norris Reese was a reporter and newspaper owner in Mount Dora. She was threatened by the racist sheriff. She became an advocate for the Groveland Four, who had 4 African-American young men who had been falsely accused of raping a white woman. She was threatened by the sheriff, by the Klan. They poisoned and killed her dog. They burned crosses at her house. They threatened her business. But what I wanted to say was that after the Supreme Court passed Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, the Klan took their anger out at Mabel because of her anti-racism stands, and they burned a cross on her yard as a warning to kill any story sympathetic to African Americans. This was 1954 here. And she wrote, after they burned the cross on her lawn as a warning, this is a quote from her, and that's what I really wanted to share most of all, because I think it's a message for how each of us can act. She said, I do not intend to withdraw my claim that it is cowardly and it is despicable to show defiance to the Supreme Court of the United States by burning a cross. Though the cross burst into flames in the front of my home Monday night, I shall not take it as a signal that I should lapse into silence, that I must now bow in abject fear to the Ku Klux Klan and write no more editorials such as the one condemning the recent cross burnings in Easttown or those deploring organizing efforts against Supreme Court segregation decision. This is the important ending. I will continue to speak as one who intends to inject a small voice of reason and sanity into a situation which could divide our nation in this, her most trying hour. She thought that was the nation's most trying hour. So many of us in this group feel this is one of our trying hours as a nation. And I just take great inspiration from the courage and voice that she had. And that's my hope, that we could find ways to have voice in today's issues.
And would you repeat her name, please, Jill?
Her name is Mabel Norris Reese. You can find information about her on a website called remembermabel.com. And while only 7% of statues nationally are of women, we are going to be dedicating a statue to her in Mount Dora this summer. So some of you might want to come to that dedication. Gilbert King, who wrote The Devil in the Grove, will be coming to the dedication, as will others who've worked on the case of the Groveland Four. And some of you know that many decades later, the Groveland Four were posthumously pardoned by the Clemency Board and Governor DeSantis in 2019. However, they have not been vindicated. They have only been pardoned, which means you pardon for a crime you committed. They have not been exonerated, which is the next step. And our government is still refusing to do that in Florida. So that's something we can directly work on. That's very clear, and to work toward their exoneration of the Groveland Four. And there will be other efforts based on Mabel's legacy that some people who are interested could become involved with.
Thank you so much, Jill. Now, I
Jackie,
see a number
Jackie,
of, what?
excuse me 1 minute. Jill often sends to our committee, our organizing committee for this discussion, resources about things that you can participate in, things that you can attend virtually to learn about, some of the kinds of things that she was just speaking about. We find it very helpful. And the question is, if you are interested in receiving those, we will be happy to forward them on to you. So send us a message at DivCom AAUW. Did I get that right, Jackie? Our address at gmail.com.
Right.
And we'll be happy to forward those things, because the resources that Jill keeps us in touch with are very, very rich.
So I'd like to just, I know we have a number of people with their hands raised. I'm not sure if those are different questions, or there's, I know a few people wanted to respond to both Charlotte Shar and Ginny's comments. So
Jeannie had indicated that she wanted to respond to Shar, and her name is now Jan Shepherd, wanted to respond to Ginny, I think. So let's do those. And then I think Peg and then Judy Southard have their hands up for, I suspect, other topics. So Jeannie, Jan, Peg, Judy, in that order.
okay.
That sound okay?
Yeah,
Unmuted. Yes, in response to Shar, I think that action, when we don't take any action, we're complicit in the results that we don't agree with. And as a member of this committee, I think our greatest action for through AAUW has been putting on this series. I was really kind of in a fog all these years about racism because I've always treated people with dignity and respect, regardless of their race. And so these little topics, not little, but major topics like microaggressions and implicit bias and white supremacy and privilege really, excuse me, were not part of my vocabulary. And now they're part of everything I think about when I'm out and about now. So it really has brought a new depth of my awareness in my fellow human beings. And I am grateful to the 6 of us on this committee who have taken so many hours to put this great program together. So thank you all.
Can I leave
thanks,
a
Jean.
short message for
Judy,
Okay.
I think we were going to do Jan and then Judy. I don't know that it matters right now because Judy's actually responding to Shar and Jan was responding to Ginny. So toss a coin.
Well,
Judy, how about you? You need to unmute.
oh, Judy Baum? Is
No,
that who
Judy
you-
Souther.
Ah,
Okay,
okay.
I'm here. This has been suggested, but I just feel the need to say this for myself. I have decided to join the NAACP in my community and here in Southern West Virginia. And I don't, it's not that I consider myself such a gift to an organization, but it's something that I need to do. I need to do it to identify myself. I've always considered myself an ally, but I hope they have a sticker I can put on my car because I want people to know without my saying anything where I stand. And if they want to start a conversation about it, I'll be very happy to do that. But I just from these discussions through the past few months, I don't think anybody ever considered me a racist, although we all have those moments. We realize that. But I don't think that people understand in this area so much about anti-racism. And I have learned so much about that. And so I just felt the need to say that. Maybe it was selfish, but for me, it's a big step. For the organization, they'll be happy to see me because lots of my friends are in that. So I just, I appreciate you ladies so much and what you have done in this past year. You have helped me in so many ways. Thank you.
You know, I'll just say one thing. Becoming anti-racist, as I understand, and I think that's what we're asking about, is how do we take responsibility? And I think that that's something we're asking and wanting to take more responsibility. Number one, even learning about things that for which we were unaware before, such as white privilege, many of us. So that is a beginning. So thank you. Just wanted to add that. And who is
Jan Shepherd.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to say that I know you've heard my story before, but I took a more personal approach to understanding issues and so on, and also this group and other groups that I've been participating with have helped me a lot. But I have been attending an African-American church in my area because one of the reasons is I realize I generally meet African-Americans in a white setting, and I wanted to have a more natural setting for them, for me to get to know them. And it's been absolutely wonderful. I do Bible study at this church, and it's a way to really understand people, their thought processes, and we also talk about our personal lives, our challenges, and so on. And it's a privilege for me because I know we've mentioned in this group before, there's so many of us that are older white ladies who have almost always lived in a segregated situation where we don't have Black neighbors, we don't have neighbors of color usually at all. And especially when you live in a small town, because small towns are extremely non-diverse. So, and I was in that type of situation, but now I live in Columbus, Ohio, which is an extremely diverse city, and it hasn't been in the past, but it is now. So, and the result of me being at Praise Temple is the name of the church, is that I have made good friends, and they're the ones that encourage me to participate in whatever they're doing that's important to them, rather than me trying to decide what's important to this white woman. So it's been a real blessing to me.
So Jan, what an example of stepping out of one's comfort zone. When it's important enough, we do take those steps. So thank you. I've thought about the example that you've shared. I've thought about it and I'm mulled over how in my own way I can do something along that path. Thank you so much for sharing it once again.
You're welcome.
Lisa Beavers is next.
Well, hi, everyone. And I am just so happy that I got to participate in these last 10 sessions today. The videos, I think, are the stories, the videos, the education, this has all been, I took a big review to go through what did I get out of this. There were so many times I was so angry by not knowing at my age so much of this information. And I really remember one of our sessions on housing, somebody spoke up and talked about we need to take the long view on education, and educating young people. And this being a University Women's Association, maybe there are ideas or a project that could really take this information even further and have it go to where we're working with kids and young adults and a diverse group of people. I don't know, but that's just something that I have in my heart because it's so important to point out what Verna Meyer said or Peggy, McIntosh. I started to go back in the list of material about white privilege. If you'd like to, go through what Peggy McIntosh, the article that she did on pages and pages of why we have white privilege. And what lessons do we, what will I do to lessen or end it? All these questions are always asked. Our heart is broken again, the brutality's back. What are we going to do about it? There's these things and everyone's naming it. Well, I had just a few others from the compilation of what I'm seeing is a review to go back and read this material again, look at the videos again and share them with friends, family, children. I've had some really rich discussions from this meeting with a lot of neighbors and friends on the topics you bring up are the topics at our dinner table, and try to find and embrace friendships that are authentic, the ones that go deeper, the ones that that people are different from ourselves. For me personally, I decided to go on a quest of reading a lot of books. I've read more books in 1 year than I have in such a long time. You gave us a whole list. We could have the whole year to read, but to pass on the information, I think it has to be where we educate, we reflect, and then we act in some way, some small way. What could I do this morning? If it means smiling at somebody, with love. The last police video, you guys, I don't know if you offered that kind of like to join in on this video that's shown to all the police departments, and their answer from all of it was showing love to people. So I'm in a virtues class with children on every Sunday. So impressed that 10-year-olds are saying, Well, let's talk about respect. Let's talk about service. 10 years old, bringing that up to it's so impressive. So finding the mentor, hey, there's so many kids that could be mentored, even on Zoom, even at our age. So those are just, action will help us not be so angry and disturbed of what's happened. That's my point.
Just as a follow-up to what Lisa was talking about, the program was on the other night, Walking While Black. And they had an acronym for what you can do, which is actually helpful to me. And it's love. L stands for learn as much as you can. O stands for open your minds and your hearts to other perspectives. V is volunteer, get involved, do something active. And E is encourage others to do the same. So in my moments of despair, I bring out love and it lifts me up. Thank you much. Suzanne.
Wait a minute. I think what I really want to say, because all of the comments have been, I don't know why I'm so emotional, but I feel like I haven't been to all 9 sessions. I've been, I met Linda late in your journey, and so I've been to all the ones that I've been to. But I think to speak to Linda and I don't remember the first woman who was talking about her concern of being 80 and what can she do, and then Charlene's thoughts and everybody else's, that what you started here to me is the first step in addressing the issue, because you cannot move to a better place if you don't even know you're not even in the right place right now, right? You can't be better if you don't know that you're not as good as you can be. So the fact that you've done this is such an inspiration to me, because even, in the experiences that I've had throughout my life, I've learned a lot about what people don't know, because it's really, and so, when you all were talking, I was saying one of the things about white privilege is that you don't need to know anything about other people in the US or anywhere else. White privilege means that, it doesn't matter. If I never met you, I don't know you, then I don't need to know what's going on in your life, because it's not important to my life. I get up every morning, I have something to eat, I have a roof over my head, I go to good schools, I get a great education, but your education leaves out the missing, as there was a Dr. John Henrik Clark, who is who's since passed on, and used to speak about Black history, or history of the people of color in this world are the missing pages of world history, right? So if white privilege pulls all of that stuff and makes you believe as a white person that we contributed nothing to your existence on this planet, then it's easy to live in this morass of, I'm okay, and I'm doing all right, and I'm not mean to other people, but you don't understand whatever. But so the bottom line is, my point is, you've begun. So you shouldn't despair, because however you become enlightened and are able to touch somebody else and enlighten them, there's 24 people on this call, 23 outside of me. And I think you've all learned stuff that's going to be with you and you're going to pass that on to those people that you come in contact with, who are like-minded or willing to listen, right? Because we know there's tons of people who are not willing to listen. And those people are going to be, we'll see what happens with them. But that's my point. I think you've begun the process, so the despair should be minimized because you're gonna get there. You may not make, you're gonna make differences, but it doesn't have to be like, like everybody, you made differences here, and that's really important. And those differences will go out to the rest of the people you meet. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Suzanne, thank you so much for your heartfelt sharing. And I think it touches many of us, particularly those who've been working on this project, that it is making a difference. I think we hope that it does, and to hear you reinforce it is just so confirming. We really appreciate that. And the fact, again, Ginny at 80 or whatever age, I know many of us have identified being embarrassed at not being aware of so many of these things. How come I didn't realize it before? And to that, I still have to, even though I've said that myself, the fact that I've learned it and I'm aware now, this was the right time for me. I wish I knew it sooner, but thank goodness, now I know, so I have a new attitude and I'm working in a new way. So again, thank you all very much. But Suzanne, always, always appreciate your candor. So
Lynn.
yes, Lynn.
Thank you. I did some of the sessions this past weekend of the Pluribus Unum. Expect some of you did too. One of the more moving talks that I listened to was subtitled, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? They had, Linda, you're smiling. Did you listen to that one too?
Yeah.
There were three pairs of, one was a black and white, one was Persian and African American, and another one was black and white, two women. The one that really moved me was Bob Harris, who is white, and a black man whose name I can't remember. Anybody else remember his name? But they talked about their friendship. One distinction that they made was the difference between relationship and friendship. And Bob Harris talked a lot about intentional friendship. And I thought that was an interesting distinction, that you find someone, if I'm white, I find an African-American person and develop an intentional friendship with that person, to the point where I listened to, and they talked about their stories, that I don't necessarily know what their life is like. And I take that in. And he talked a lot about learning so much about his friend's life. I became a Baha'i in Amherst, Massachusetts, where we were a pretty diverse community. And I just remember some of the stories that my African-American friends told me about their lives. And I did recall sitting in an assembly meeting one night, and where there were two African-American women, and their sons it was evening, and their sons were out and hadn't called in, and they were nervous wrecks. And I couldn't understand why they were nervous wrecks, and it was 8 o'clock, getting dark, and their sons hadn't called in. I mean, things like that. Why were they nervous wrecks? Of course, now I know why they were nervous wrecks. My little white boy was out there too. I didn't understand. I mean, I had to learn things about their lives that I would not have understood otherwise. But that's what he was talking about, learn their stories. And they were talking, it's more than just a relationship, it's an intentional friendship. And they talked about the hours that they spend together. They get together for coffee. They know each other's kitchens. That was a big thing. They know each other's kitchens.
Oh, wow. Out
together. Intentional friendships, not relationships, intentional friendships. And I thought that was a marvelous part of it. So that I learned a lot from the conference. I did, but that was a highlight for me, intentional friendships. And I think, and they said, if you do that, then you will hopefully inspire other people to do that. And it takes more than just a howdy. So that's one of my thoughts. I have many. I too would just be sure to thank all of you for doing this. I think I missed one or two, but they've been wonderful. I have learned a whole lot, and I don't want to go into it, but I just want to be sure to thank you all.
Lynn, thank you so much. And I think that's important that you shared this intentional friendships, because I think it's a conversation that's come up. It does come up, and sometimes there's that thought, well, it's so contrived and whatnot. But again, I think this is important. If, as has been identified, many of us don't come across people of color just because of where we live, then in order, if this is an important issue, we do need to make a point to get ourselves to where we can meet people of color. And yes, it is a matter of making an intentional effort. I know when we move to a new neighborhood, like here we live, many of us are in the villages. We didn't know most anybody when we moved here. So we met somebody, there was something about them we liked. So yes, we had to make an effort to become friends. So what's the difference? So why are we self-conscious if I say, well, I see someone who's Black, I think I want to see if I can become friends with them. We have to put ourselves out there. If this is important, I mean, this is my opinion. I'm not trying to preach, but I really appreciate that example. Thank you. And as someone said that, thank you, Suzanne. You said that might be a very good topic. So we're writing it down.
Peg.
Yes, thank you. I have two comments. One in regard to what Lynn just was talking about as far as the intentional friendships. There is a Black lady who I have crossed paths with in various social aspects. She goes to my church. We have a couple other things in common. We're both Weight Watchers. I mean, you know, and I said to her one day, boy, when this pandemic is over, I would really love to go have a cup of coffee and sit and chat with you. We have so much in common. And she said, well, let's not wait for the pandemic to be over. And so we started Zooming socially and getting to know each other. Now, we still have a long way to go. We don't know each other's kitchens yet, but I'm hoping that maybe it will get to that point. I specifically am trying, although I want to hear her stories and I want to get to know the challenges that she faces that I don't. Right now, I'm concentrating on just the friendship part of it, the getting to know this person as a person. And hopefully that will lead to a deeper friendship where we can share more important things. So I think you have to, I totally agree with the concept. I think you have to, it's different for every relationship, every friendship, and you have to take it step by step. The other thing I wanted to address was the fact that I, like pretty much everyone else on this call, am also feeling the despair when I see the amount of hatred and refusal to accept reality that is rampant in the world. On Facebook, I belong to a book club page. You know, people recommend books or ask for recommendations, and it's just a very nice, oh, I just read a good book you might enjoy, blah, blah, blah. Well, someone recently on that page recommended Waking Up White by Debbie Irving, which I had read. And I commented on it and said, oh, yeah, loved that book, really opened my eyes about white privilege. Well, that released a barrage of comments. And I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was at the number of people who said, it's a bunch of hogwash, ridiculous. I was so upset. I had to just shut off the comments and get off of it. I mean, I responded with a hopefully in a kind manner, but with the truth. Referred them to a thing that is on Facebook. No, it's not on Facebook. On YouTube. That experiment where they had the college students all standing in a line, take a step forward if you this, take 3 steps back if your parents are divorced, that kind of thing. You've probably all seen it. But I commented on that. But it shocks me that we still have, and it upsets me that we still have so much hatred in this world. And so those are the 2 comments I wanted to make. I felt proud of myself for responding the way I did. But on the other hand, then I got so upset with it. And I think, yeah, and that's part of my white privilege, that I can just walk away from it and not have to deal with it. And my Black friends can't do that. That's all.
Thank you so much, Peg. So look how we're learning from each other and how this does ripple effects and how we can reinforce actions and behaviors. So we're learning there are things we can do. Of course, there's more, and that's a question that I find comes up frequently. What can I do? So I hope we're getting at least a taste that there are things we can do. No matter how old we are, there are things we can do. The fact that we're here and interested in this topic is something we're doing. So bravo.
I thought Lynn Hunter had her hand up. Did you change
did.
your mind?
No.
Or did I? Okay, so you're next, and then Jan
This is
Shepherd.
quick.
Sorry.
One thing I do that helps me with despair is I pray for this country every single day. So that's short and sweet. That helps me with despair.
Thank you. Jan.
I wanted to say something that's personal about me, that in January, I think a little before I joined with this group, and I had been taking a course on racism, anti-racist, and so on, the whole works, a very intense course. And I was on a Zoom meeting with some people I did not know personally in January, and I had kind of a run-in with an African-American man that I'm really ashamed at my behavior. And you probably don't need to know why I'm ashamed, but I wrote myself an apology for him, and because I wanted to be able to apologize, but then I didn't have any way to get in touch with this man. And I noticed, I knew his name, and I noticed he was on Facebook. So I sent him a Facebook friendship request, and several months later, he accepted it. And now I'm still ashamed and unable to send him the apology, but I keep reminding myself on a daily basis that I need to do that, because I think I hurt him. And I don't know exactly how he responded to what I said on this group, but I just wanted to say that I'm kind of surprised that it's so difficult for me to send this apology.
Interesting. SB.
Thank you.
Hi. I was answering the question, what did I get out of it? Plenty. I am glad that I have volunteered for the committee. I felt like I've gone to university and back and got a degree. Now, what is troublesome for me is with this issue, there seems to be underlying hate to some people. That hate comes out in so many ways and manifestations. I do not understand it, where it stems from, and it keeps on popping up with various people. What I would like to remind people is not what you do, it's not what you say, it's how you made the other person feel. I think that goes to that intentional friendship that was brought up. I caught that with Maya Angelou, and I kept on thinking of that. I think you are right. You can say anything, you can do anything for somebody. If you don't make them feel comfortable or welcome or, you know, interested in them, I think the relationship or the friendship is not going to be so solid. That's all that I want to share. Thank you.
SB, you know, that's interesting. And I think that's it. It has to do with our intention and our heart. And I'm thinking about what Jan said. And I think about something that happened at one of our sessions here, and I refer back to it. I've done it a few times. Because we're on a learning mode, right? A culture of learning. So if we're willing, we're going to make mistakes. And sometimes if you make a mistake and you realize it, right? The good news is we can go back and say, oh, I didn't realize, or I'm sorry. And I think of so often in one of our sessions when I said something and Suzanne so lovingly and kindly corrected me. And I said, oh my gosh, that was a microaggression. And I so appreciated that she took the moment to help me realize what I'd done. I'm hoping for all of us, we realize that. So I think no matter what, right? If we are sincere in our expression, then it's up to the other person how they respond. I don't believe saying I apologize lessens us in any way. To me, it demonstrates, and this is personal, it demonstrates respect for the other person. They may not even remember, or they may say whatever, but what a way to deepen the level of relationship, to acknowledge something and be willing to be that vulnerable. So these are all wonderful learning opportunities. And again, that's the whole thing with microaggressions. We inhale the pollution that we're bombarded with from the media continuously, which is racist. So we may repeat things, or the implicit bias that we've picked up along the way. But here we are helping, being willing to help one another get better. So again, thank you to each of you. It's a thought for you, Jan, but I think about it. I think about that moment so often in such a positive way. And I appreciate it again so much from Suzanne. So thank you.
Jackie, Susan has had her hand up, not electronically, but her hand up. So she's next. Jill has her hand up, so she'll be after that, and then we'll come back to Shar.
Hi, yeah,
Susan.
first of all, I'd like to thank Peg for inviting me. I've only attended the last couple, so I kind of missed out on the first few, but I'm still working, and my company has been very proactive about training us with implicit bias and microaggressions and things like that. So I've had a lot of exposure to those concepts, and it's been a real learning experience. One of the sessions, one of the speakers talked about, they said, you know, if you've got someone who says, oh, it just doesn't exist and there's no systemic racism anymore, is to ask them, if you could choose to have been born black or white in this country, would you choose to have been born black? And no one, virtually no one says, no, I'd rather be black than white, because they know in their heart that Blacks are treated differently in this country. And then, as far as what we can do, I love the starfish story because, yeah, we can't change everything and it's very frustrating, but we can make small differences. And one of the things I've done since I've been in the villages is I've just become more politically active. Just registering voters and getting out the vote and things like that. And it's I come home sometimes after I've been out for a while and my husband's like, so what did you do? I said, well, I registered 2 people in the last 3 hours, but it's a small piece. But if you've got a lot of people doing it, you can make a difference, and you can call your Congress people and you can write your Congress people. And again, you're only one person, but if a lot of people do it, I think we can have an impact. And so that's my 2 cents worth. But again, thank you for letting me join this group. It's been really,
it's our pleasure, Susan.
Yeah.
The more the merrier.
And just so you know, excuse me, go ahead, Linda.
Your story is similar to a very short video clip that is equally telling. I think the woman's name is Dr. Edwards, but I'm not sure. And she's doing like a TED Talk in front of an arena full of white people. And she says, okay, if you were treated like Black people are treated and it would be okay with you, raise your hand. And nobody moved a muscle. And she said, okay, maybe you didn't understand me. If you would be okay being treated the way Black people are treated in this country, raise your hand. And nobody moved. And she said, what that tells you is that it's wrong and you're doing nothing about it.
Thank
Jill.
you. Excuse me, I just want to say, because a few people have said you haven't been to all of our sessions. In your invitation, we did, and we can do it again. We do have all of these sessions are recorded and they're on YouTube. So if there are any that you've missed and would like to look at them, check out that YouTube link that we sent to you. Thanks. Go ahead, Linda.
We also, by the way, have a complete list of all of the materials when that was sent out to you. So whether you listen to or watch the discussion is certainly up to you, but all those materials are still out there and available to you. Jill, I think, is next. Jill, there you are.
Hi. I think I want to second in a lot of ways what Suzanne said. For me, moving to the villages was culture shock. I lived, well, maybe for all of us, for the last 40 years, more than 40 years, I lived in a county that was majority African American and Latino, and white people were the minority. And we had very rich interactions, friendships for 40 something years. And moving into the villages, it's like a whole other world. Which probably it is for many people. For many people, it's a positive other world. But I think for me, it was very shocking. And a lot of the friendships with friends of color have been people in communities surrounding the villages. And I have established many close friendships with people in the area around. The work that your committee is doing in AAUW is the most encouraging thing. I have to just commend your committee. It's the most encouraging activity that I have seen in the villages in the few years that I have been here. It's so important, and I think this is a beginning. I hope that we would continue to build on it. It's important to all of us, I think, but I think I was thinking about it. Remember the poem about when I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple? We need an older woman's, and I hear there are a couple of men on here, manifesto for old age. We don't have so much to lose. Most of us, I know a couple of people said they're still working, but most of us don't have jobs to lose. We don't have things to threaten. We can be advocates. We can speak out. People are, I think this is our chance. This is a time that we can do that. And so I want to make one suggestion. I used to conduct a lot of workshops on the forms of bias. Most of us know some of the forms, like stereotyping or scapegoating and linguistic bias. But the most dangerous form of bias in a lot of ways is invisibility. And what so many people in today's discussion are saying is, until they participated in this series, issues of racism were invisible to them. When they're invisible, we don't know they're there to be addressed, and we certainly can't figure out how to address them. One of the things I think a small, maybe char a starfish we can throw out here is we have tremendous bias right now in people of color being invisible in the villages media, within the villages. A group of us have complained to the villages monthly magazine that comes out with the newspaper protesting the lack of inclusion of people of color in the villages magazine. After months of protests, they finally did an article on sophisticated gentlemen. And we commended them for that, but then said, do they know there are people of color who play tennis? There are people of color who are in clubs. There are people of color who have grandchildren. They're not in any of those pictures either. It's not just to once in a while do a feature on a group that is of people of color. So it's one thing we could do is reach out to our own media. Perhaps this committee can offer to help educate or give them materials for articles for both either the Daily Sun and or the magazine that are both run by the villages, to try and help educate a broader community and to make some of these things that have been invisible, visible.
It's a good idea. Thank you. Shar, you're next.
Well, all of you have so much to say that I keep taking notes, but I'll try to address things one at a time. You stimulate me. First of all, in apologies and offering apologies, I find it helps for me before I do that to think how I felt when I received an apology from someone that was sincere. It actually makes me like them better, and that helps me to offer one. The other thing I want to talk about is intentional friendships, and something I struggle with is fear of offending someone who is Black, because I can say things unintentionally and not mean them, but it's kind of a vicious circle because you need a friend who's willing to dope slap you when you do something like that. But when you're trying to make the friendship, how do you get there? So you just muddle through, I guess. I've made a Zoom friend with a Black woman who is in the League of Women Voters. And I was going to have her come visit me in March of last year, and then COVID hit. So, she lives in Palm Beach County, Palm Coast. And she and another woman in the Florida League created a work plan on diversity, equity, and inclusion that I think I can share with the AAUW if you're interested in seeing it. And they have some practical steps organizations can take. And one of them, was my aha moment. I'm the webmaster for our local league. And one of the things in this plan are the images you are projecting, would that feel inclusive to someone who was Black? And so I went back and I looked at the images on our website, and I put on my goggles. Okay, I'm a prospective member, I'm Black. Would I feel welcome in this group? And guess what? All of the images were, white people. And I went back to Ethelene and I changed them, and I said, my whole life, unlike Jill, I've lived in segregated communities. So when I see a group of white people together that's illustrating, get out the vote, I don't think anything about it because that's the way the world looks. It's kind of that invisible nature, I guess. And I put on a new lens, and all of a sudden I said to myself, duh. So, it's so much to learn. And this old dog is trying. And I apologize ahead of time because I tell people I offend my white friends too. So, don't take it personally. I'm a big mouth.
We've known for a long time that you're an equal opportunity offender.
Yeah, just like Henry Higgins and
yeah, it's all good.
But I have even more opportunity when I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So, thank you.
Jan, back to you.
Thank you. Well, I think this does follow what you just said, and it's about microaggressions. The whole session disturbed me in some way because, to me, a microaggression is like a backhanded compliment, where you're really appearing to be complimenting when you're not, and you're insulting. It's the invisible insult, or you think it's invisible. And one of the things that bothered me was that a compliment that a white person might give a black person could be taken as an insult when it wasn't meant that way. And so also in January, when my brain was kind of weird, I'm going to blame it on COVID, but I had the intention of making everybody laugh, anybody that I came in touch with. So I went to the dentist's office. I had an appointment there, and a black woman who I didn't know was the receptionist. So I thought, I'm going to try out my theory about microaggressions and see what her response is. And so I said, are you the kind of black woman that would be insulted if I said I like your hair? And she laughed. She laughed loudly. She said, no, I like compliments. And I did like her hair. So I told her, I like your hair. And we had more of a discussion on other issues as well. But I thought, okay, that kind of gave me the idea that some people get insulted with compliments and other people just take it as a compliment. So anyhow, that was my my testing of my theory. And also I have been an equal opportunity offender as well. And to try to explain that to other people, it's like, okay, it's kind of difficult. So I'm glad to hear someone else has that.
Thanks, Jan. We have some other hands up. I think Lynn has her hand up again. Lynn Hunter. If you would unmute yourself, please, Lynn.
Okay.
There you go.
I just have a few process comments. One is I loved the materials that would prepare us for the Wednesday events. I thought they were rich, they were helpful, they were actually fun. The readings were great, the YouTube things were very informative, and to me it always said you all really did your homework. I was really impressed, and they were just really wonderful to do. I don't think I missed a one. So that was one thing. Another thing was I found the breakout groups really, really helpful. And I liked it when we only had one question to answer as opposed to three, because we would get to our breakout groups and many times we would forget what the questions were. And all it took was for one person to go off on a tangent and the questions would go to hell. So when we had one question to answer in the breakout groups, we were, I think, more able to stay on task. I can't say enough how much I appreciate what you all have done. It's just been fantastic. I mean, one way not to get despairing is be surrounded by people like you all, and be able to do this. I had one other thought about process. Oh, Linda mentioned the materials, that we can get to the materials. How do we get to the materials? I'd like to go back over them at some point. How do we get to them?
We sent them to you with the invitation to this meeting, but we can send them out again.
Somehow, this is the third time that I registered, I got the confirmation, and yet when it came time to get the link, it's not there. And Linda, she's had to do this twice for me.
Okay,
Huh.
it's what you originally, I'll be happy to resend it. But
Okay.
when we sent out the invitation informing everyone that we're having this meeting, we had attachments. There were 2 graphs that were
Yeah.
reviewed, and there was a list of all of the topics and the prep material that we sent out over the 9 months.
Okay,
So perhaps you didn't get it. We'll be happy to resend it.
I don't know.
We'll be happy to do that. Did any of the rest of you want to have that list of resources again? Okay, so you know what? I'll just resend that.
Just
all.
resend it. For those of you, let me share this and you'll see what's coming. There are links within the document to get you to the various readings and
Okay.
etc.
Okay, thank you.
Hang on. Can you see that?
Yes,
Okay, it's going to look like that.
okay,
And you'll notice that under each item, we have the link to get to it. There are a couple of pieces
oh, fantastic.
that were articles that we actually attached a PDF of.
Okay,
Jackie, you may want to include those as well when you send it out.
What, the PDFs?
Yeah, there's one under anti-racism. It was
The
Kendi's
ones in
article
red.
from the Atlantic,
The
and
ones in
under
red.
microaggressions, there were 2 attachments. One was the definition of microaggressions. Actually, there were 3. And those very attachments, I think Lisa Beavers was just commenting on, because they really provide a framework for how to respond when someone says something that feels like a microaggression.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have that up actually. We'll be happy to send that all out again, and we'll include also the address for the YouTube if you want to see any of our previous sessions. I will send both of those out to you.
thank you.
I actually have a question that I may be the only one who thinks like this, but I'll toss it out there, and if it's off base, we can go in a different direction. We've been reading and viewing and talking and listening for a year now, actually longer than that, but intensively for a year. And the information overload for me has been phenomenal. Because I'm that kind of a learner, I've had to shift my way of thinking with each new set of information that comes in. And as I reflect on this past year, I think there were 2 books that I read that really provided a framework within which I could plug all these other instances of horrific behavior on the part of white people. Those 2 books were Caste and The Sum of Us. And really, they helped me make sense out of something that is nonsensical. So that I look at instances of systemic racism, and I see them as very transparent efforts to keep people of color in their place and to reinforce white supremacy and superiority. And I then look and notice how those efforts are damaging everyone. And so our entire society is threatened by racism. It is a public health hazard. And that's probably an understatement. But for me, I now see a picture where behaviors can be understood in the context of keeping people where they belong, suppressed, and not caring that it hurts everyone. How have you put this together? Because it's been an enormous amount of information and emotionally charged and overwhelming. As human beings, we try to make sense of things. So how have you made sense of this? Or have you?
Not very well.
Judy, Bon.
I don't think there's any sense to be made of it. I was just thinking while you were talking, I have the same difficulty with materials about the treatment of Black people as I do about materials having to do with the Holocaust. I cannot go into a Holocaust museum. I think I would probably come out permanently. I don't know if it's just I'm soft-hearted or what it is, but I cannot fathom one set of people being so horrifically horrible to another set of people who have one nose, two eyes, one mouth, two ears. They're the same thing. Everybody has the same stuff. Why in the world pick on one group because of one thing that's different about them? And my response to that is profane, so I won't say it. But I don't think there's any sense to be made because I don't think there's any sense to it.
Thank you. Suzanne.
I'm going to say at what my husband constantly says is that racism trumps everything. So if racism trumps everything, then the only way to me, because the problem is we're all human. So it isn't, her name was Carol Taylor. She wrote a book and she called it colorism because it's not racism. We're all part of the human race. But if you think of us in segments of Black, African American is a race, and Latinos are a race, then what you get to do because of that is make them less than you because you don't see them as human. And that's the problem. The problem I have is that, especially in this country now, is that we forget that we're Americans, right? We're all Americans, irregardless of what color we are. And so it hurts. I hear what you're saying. It hurts my soul to know that are people that don't like me just because I don't look like them. And I didn't grow up like that. I mean, I didn't grow up not liking people because they didn't look like me. In our, what I was taught by my mother was that you have 3 strikes against you. You're poor, you're a Negro, because that's what we were back then. And, or was it 2 strikes, whatever. You were poor and you're a Negro. And you just—
You're a woman.
Well, she didn't say the woman part because in her mind, that wasn't an issue. Her and my father were raised in Jamaica, West Indies. So she came to this country, in the early 1950s. She was a maid. She started out as a maid. She, eventually, educated herself and became a nurse. But you know, when she got to this country, you know, she lived on an island where most of the people were of color. So when she got here, she saw the drinking, you know, the fountains that were white and black, and she, you know, she just never understood any of it. So, you know, my parents lived they came to New York, but those were the things we learned. So, you know, and as children, I don't want to say you don't see color. You know, people are different colors, because that's a microaggression when somebody says they don't see color. We were born seeing color, so you see color. But so friends to me were just friends. They were, you know, and you just don't get why somebody doesn't like you because you're not their color. It just doesn't, intuitively, it doesn't make sense. And you see it when you see those places on Facebook where you have the children running to each other and they're black or white, because it's about I'm a person and you're a person. You know, it doesn't make a difference that we don't look exactly the same. None of us look exactly the same when it's all said and done. I mean, put 5 white people together, none of them look the same. Even in a family, you can have people that look, you're like, are they really related? I mean, so we don't all look the same. So what is the problem with it? So yeah, that's my husband saying, racism trumps everything. And if you understand that, and he also says, if you know the beginning, the end will not surprise you. So if you know how the story starts, then the end will not surprise you. And to Peg, who said, you know, the vitriol she got when she, you know, said what I understand that. You know, sometimes I'm like, I see something, and soon as I see what somebody says, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can only imagine what the comments are gonna say. And I'm like, where is all this hate coming from? It's so disturbing that people can hate like that. I say one little thing and you're gonna jump up and down, and it's like, oh, so you sort of like, you walk out your door, you don't know who you might run into, who's going to feel exactly that way. And so you try to, you know, you have to do the love thing. But, you know, it's tough. It really is very tough, my sense.
But it is, Suzanne. And, you know, I've been listening to people talk about the hate. There's no doubt that it's there. I'm not taking issue with that. In counseling circles, they say that anger is a second order emotion, that you get angry because of some other fear, whatever. I would argue that hate is a second order emotion. And it's a second order emotion that comes directly from a belief of superiority. That is, white is better, white is good, white is superior. And if that's the case, then I can be taught to fear and then hate those that are inferior, because it's a mechanism to keep them where they belong from that white perspective. And on a certain level, I understand dislike, I understand anger, I understand hate, sort of. I don't understand the notion of superiority. I don't get it. And yet it forms the very basis for many people's functioning and existence on the planet. And therefore it needs to be protected at all costs. And that's problematic. I think Lisa, who is next, has the right idea. Let's educate kids early on and let them know the opposite of what they're being told in the moment. Lisa.
Just you're bringing up in my heart, I feel when it's hate, it's a lack of love. It's a void of love. And I just on the side note, and not to bring my faith tradition in, but I decided to have an interfaith devotional every week addressing even some of these issues. I've put together devotions on the healing of racism through justice and through many different, just looking at it from many different viewpoints. And what does all religions say about these subjects? So that's something just on the side note that I've done as an action item to try to do. And then sent out this material even to a lot of friends and family who've sent it on to other people too. But you know, the racism is this profound deviation from the standard of true morality. It deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability to live a meaningful and flourishing life. And this one question came up: why should man, who's endowed with a sense of justice and sensibilities of conscience, be willing that one of his members of the human family should be rated and considered as subordinate? You know, one time during the protests, I heard a lady who was just yelling out, and I thought she was so angry, but she was saying, "We don't want revenge. We just want equality." I can't get her image out of my head. So how do we get equality? How do we make the playing field more equal? We educate, we try to, in our daily lives, portray equality and try to make, you know, just show more love, which I do love this one thing about love. It's just this, it says, "Be sincerely kind, not in appearance only. Let each one of God's loved ones center his attention on this, to be the Lord's mercy to man, to be the Lord's grace. Let him do some good to every person whose path he crosseth, and be of some benefit to him. In this way, the light of divine guidance will shine forth, and the blessings of God will cradle all mankind. For love is light, no matter what abode it dwelleth, and hate is darkness, no matter where it may make its nest." I just wanted to end with that.
Lisa, thank you so much. We appreciate your bringing that spiritual perspective to account, because there is a perspective that prejudice and racism, these are spiritual diseases, prejudice and racism. So I want to thank you for reminding us. All right, who was next? Linda, you have the list.
Judy Bond.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I'm using the space bar this time. I have a theory, a little different possibly, but a long time ago, I saw something, I don't remember where, maybe it was a newspaper, magazine, something like that, that said in X number of years, this country will no longer have a majority of white people. The majority will change. It will become a majority of black people. And I've seen it since saying, and brown people, of all sorts of other people other than white. And I said to myself, that's what causes hate, because they're scared to death that if there's more of them than there are of us, they're going to start treating us like we've treated them. And oh my God. So that was my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. SB's next.
Oh yeah, I heard what you said about underneath anger and some underlying emotions. You address about fear, you address about hate. And I feel with my own experience, there's some fear from some people. If somebody looked different, somebody just came into the country, wasn't born in the country, they have a fear of losing whatever they have. In many situations, it could be a job. They lost getting a better paying job and on and on. And the hate is the one that I couldn't understand, that deep-seated hate to know that somebody looking different from them, they right away say something derogatory. One thing I heard from one of my friends, he says, well, they had to get together with some people and they say, one of them right away said, if they are on the other party and it's not my political party, I don't want to be their friends. Now that is an outright hate right away. Now, where is that coming from? I've been thinking about that many, many times. And I thought maybe when they are born, right from the very beginning, the community, the parents says, well, the people looking different from you, they're no good. You know, they were no good. So don't go, effectively don't go near them, don't be their friends. Then that grows out. They went to school, they went to that, read a book in first grade about that. I always remember this. It's one thing I got out of it, is that socialized from the South, what about the Black depleting and so forth and so on. So that hate is there. How can you get rid of that hate? By education. I think the way they were doing it now is people becoming aware. We have that opening our minds. And I think teaching people basically open your mind. I guess I grew up in a family wherein I was taught that being different is good. You learn something from them, you open your mouth, they have something, you are all cousins, have something to offer. That when I was growing up in different environments, I always had an open mind. Am I going to learn something from this? I remember moving from Canada to America at one point in time. My husband was kind of sad seeing all our stuff left in the truck. Oh, well, I'm going to miss our neighbor, so and so. I was happy. I said, I'm going to learn how to drive around a circle, you know, the roundabout type of thing. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So I think we cannot change people, but I think by just continue talking about it and hearing different point of views from different people, I think we're going to slowly open up our mind. Now, talking about the superiority, there is a saying, God is an Englishman. So in England, they have basically, to my thinking, it's a caste system. You know, if you didn't go to this school, to that school, if you're what your father did or your parents did, what kind of work, and and your accent, you know, you're down the bottom of the pile. So if you don't speak the English, the Queen's or King's English, you'll be down the pile. And I think that exists in many countries. Just doesn't, it's not as pronounced as we have here in America, because they don't really probably address it. That's all that I have to share, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thanks. Let's hear Suzanne, and then we're going to just take a little corner turn after we hear Suzanne.
I have two comments. So to Lisa Beavers, I applaud your faith. I always applaud the faith of those that I believe the tenets of what that believe in the tenets that would rise us up to the level of humanism that we should be, or to love our neighbor as ourselves, which is what we were taught if you were a Christian. But it always reminds me of this movie, The Bucket List, with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. Where Morgan Freeman tells him, because Morgan Freeman is a man of faith, and Jack Nicholson is not in this movie. And he said to him, do you think that you know more than I want to say 50 billion people on this planet who believe in a higher being, right? So I've always, because my faith, I really am, I'm not faithless, but I I believe in a higher being, but I don't believe, my personal belief is that if we had so many people who believed in God and in the teachings of Muslims believe in, they pray 5 times a day, and we have Christians who believe what they believe, and Buddhists. And if people of faith were so dominant, are so dominant in this country, in this world, it seems to me that war and this hate back and forth for different types of people would be at a minimum, as opposed to what we see, which is we have wars everywhere. We have people fighting about all kinds of nonsense. So that's what I feel. I sort of feel like we speak of faith and we believe, there are people that believe, but we have lots of people that say they believe and do not practice that faith. And to Judith Bond, I have to say that yes, supposedly, not supposedly, scientifically, white people are they're not reproducing themselves in a way that what's going to happen, I think it's by 2050 or 52, they will be the minority on the planet. And that's the planet, not just in the United States of America. And because of that, they are going to hold on to power, those in power, until whatever. And I think, as you say, the fear is the fact that will we, people of color, treat them the way they treated us? And I think that is a lot of what the fear is and why they are holding on for dear life and not, accepting the things that, why these laws are changing. They know that we vote more than they do. And so they're changing the laws so that even if we do vote, or trying to prevent us from voting. So they're going to do what they can to maintain that majority, that superiority until they no longer can hold on to my comments. Thank you.
Sad but true.
I think I know there's another comment that wants to be made, but I'm going to just we have one other thing we'd like to ask. And I know many of you have identified some things you'd like to hear from us. But if you could clarify the committee, if there are any topics you'd like us to readdress or topics that you would suggest that you'd like to have us cover in the future, if you could identify those. Again, we've all been taking notes, but we don't want to miss any because this is a group effort.
Sort of seed the waters. Jill has already suggested to us in another forum that we address the notion of intersectionality between gender and race. So there is a potential topic. Lynn, you have an idea for us?
Mute.
I'm afraid this voter suppression thing is not only not going away, it's growing. So I'd like to continue to work I want to keep I don't know what to say. I want to keep abreast of it. And I'm really worried about it. It's like one state after another. And if anything makes me anxious, that does. So it looks like it's not only not going away, it's growing. And I'm worried about it. So I think that might need to be addressed again, unfortunately.
Thank you, Lynn. Anyone else? I think Peg had made a suggestion here in the chat. A chance to practice how to respond to comments our friends and families make that are inappropriate and need to be addressed. Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one, and it's based on a webinar that I saw the other night. Joy DeGruy, and I can't remember the fellow who she was co-presenting with. But the notion of the presentation was we should not go back to normal. now that the pandemic is over and everybody's saying, oh yeah, let's get back to normal. They pointed out how normal was not such a good thing, and therefore we ought not to do that. We might consider what the new normal might be, what we might evolve to, just as an idea. Len, you have another idea?
No, I didn't mean.
Okay. Gay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Gay, you need to unmute. There you
Okay.
go.
One of the things you're speaking about because of the pandemic was brought out some of the issues with healthcare, and so I was thinking that maybe we would like to discuss the healthcare issues that are have been brought out by this pandemic, especially related to Black citizens, and what's been happening with that. So that was kind of a topic I thought might be interesting.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Jill, you have to unmute.
I had one other recommendation before, which was to spend a session discussing critical race theory, because the states including ours, have passed laws against that. And I don't think people understand what it is. And it's been labeled in ways that are very derogatory. And I think we should understand it, and we should be able to advocate for it. After today's discussion, I'm also thinking it would be worthwhile perhaps to spend a session on race and religion, because certainly religion has been used. I love it to hear Lisa and Lynn talk about using religion in the most positive ways. But we know that religion has been used. The Klan burns crosses on people's lawns. Religion has been used in very racist ways and continues to be today. So I think I didn't think about it before, but after today's discussion, that has reminded me. The other has made me think about that. And then the other one I wanted to say was what Linda talked about about superiority. I think most religions think theirs is superior. That's why they're part of it. I think certainly there's a sense here that Islam is an inferior religion for evangelicals or whomever. It's all of those issues, but it's not just on this. A group of us was invited to Gallaudet University. People know that, which is the only university in the US for deaf and hearing challenged people. We were invited there to work with them on issues of race because they were having issues of racism on the Gallaudet campus and in their community. And what we learned, and this is back to what Linda said about superiority, was that they had a whole caste system at Gallaudet, and it depended on how significantly your hearing, how much hearing you had or not. And the highest ranking people were the people who were completely and profoundly deaf and only used sign language. If you used, and you were superior, if you used spoken language, you were less superior. So they had a ranking system. And I just want to raise that it's something about how people interact with one another that we create these gradations and create being superior, inferior, and maybe it's something worth exploring, that phenomenon, and how do we counter that?
I agree with that, Jill. It reminds me of a quote from a book called Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
So do we have any others? Because we're approaching the end of our time, and we have a couple more things we want to just do and share. Anyone else before? Otherwise, you can always email us at
divcomaaauw@gmail.com.
Right. divcomaaauw@gmail.com. If you have some, if you think of some things after the fact, just send them to us. Jim, you had something, otherwise we're going to have announcements. There it is. It's on the chat. There's our email address. Jim Shear.
Yes, just a couple of points. As one of the male voices for this discussion, I purposely like to hold back because and I've said this before, I like to hear the ringing tones of the feminine voice. That feminine voice possesses for me justice, intuition, and a focus on service. Truly leaders, and I applaud AAUW and actually many of you who have participated in this series. A couple of points that I'd like to suggest that maybe could be topics. One would be to examine the impact of true justice on racism. And I'll just leave a little vignette. I heard a presentation by an eminent provider of services for women who are being seeking immigration to the United States. And her advocacy and her service to these women over the past 20 years, she raised an interesting point about justice and how the justice system, in her mind, in terms of immigration law, as well as servicing the needs of people who are oppressed. When she was asked about the question of justice and the need to change the justice system and our laws, she made a very interesting point. She said, as a woman, I could say some things, but on the basis of race and the injustice that has been confronted to people of color, she feels that the people who have been oppressed should be the ones who actually write the laws. And I thought, my God, how profound. What a sense of really examining justice in a totally new way. The other topic that I would like us to consider, which has been kind of a thread to many of our discussions, is how do we elevate our conversations about race? How do we change the way in which we interact with people? What are the words that we use? And I was very, very impressed with the fact of watching this process this morning, how it gravitated to the fact that when we have a spiritual principle or a faith or an idea that embraces all, and that conversation guides the way ahead, I think that's a very, very profound area for us to explore and to have maybe more than one session.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, profound. So we have a lot to chew on. You've given the committee a lot. So we appreciate it because again, this is we're all on this journey and a culture of learning together. So we did ask if anyone has any announcements. We asked you to wait until after everything. So does anyone have any announcements beside the committee? Hi, John. Okay, then we do want to, the committee has a few things we just want to let you know. And I'm just going to do this and we're going to get, oh my goodness. Here we go. So we have, a lot of different resources have been identified. We do, oh, that's not what I want to show you. Whoops, excuse me. 2 more resources we'd like to offer you. There is a program on Amazon Prime called The Underground Railroad. It's on TV. It's it's 1 hour, a 10-part 1-hour series. Any of you that have it or have friends, go watch it. That might be very interesting. And on May 31st, there's going to be a CNN special, Dreamland, the Burning of Black Wall Street, the destruction of a thriving Black community in Greenland, Oklahoma. So those might be of interest to you. We wanted to be sure that you were aware of that. In addition, we do want to let you know that we're going to be kind of on a summer schedule, and we're going to have 1 meeting over the summer, which the next one will be Wednesday, July 28th. So it's the 4th Wednesday, and it's going to be a positive response to systemic racism, namely purpose-driven communities. So you will be hearing from us about that and given some information, and we're going to be sharing that with you. So purpose-driven communities. We will be returning to monthly meetings starting September 22nd, and we will continue on Zoom because there are a number of you, quite a few, we're thrilled, that are not local. So we will continue on Zoom. So again, reminder that we will not be meeting in June or August. Our next meeting is July, and then we'll start again on a regular schedule in September. So we want to thank you all for everything that you've shared. And
I'd just like to mention that on August 26th, I think the League of Women Voters is going to do something to celebrate suffrage. So
Yes.
Everybody's invited. But
every year, the local league and AAUW Lake Sumter partner for an equality. And there'll be more information out about that for those of you who are local. But it will be August 26th. Thanks for mentioning that, Christine.
Right, and remind us again in July, we'll remind everyone once again of that. So we want to again thank you all for your active participation. This has been, as always, very rich in our discussions. And we would like to end today the way we started this whole 9-month session. In the very first session, we started with a video, and we'd like to end with another one to share with you. So we're going to share that and then look forward to seeing you in July. So we're going to give, I think Linda's going to cue that up for us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Set up?
Not yet.
No?
No.
Stop the share, just a moment.
Linda, I think you shared your whole screen instead of just the video.
Yeah, just a
I saw
minute.
all the folders on your home screen.
Right, it was the wrong.
Share.
I got it now.
You have it? Okay, because I was going to get it otherwise. There you go.
Yeah.
happens next. Ask yourself why. These are the Black stories we've been shown. A narrow view that limits our understanding. But there's so much more to see. The full picture of Black life. Let's widen the screen so we can widen our view.
So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in July.